Hey y'all, welcome to the Team LocoFit Roundtable, hosted by me, Laurin and Karina, owner of Team LocoFit. Each week, I am joined by one of our coaches to dive headfirst into the nutrition, training, mindset, and coaching strategies we use with our clients. If you loved the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, you know the drill. And for more information about coaching, the programs we offer, and additional content, visit teamlocofit.com. All right, and we are back, and I'm with Coach Karina.
Hey guys.
And this is going to be a podcast all about aging.
I feel like I haven't been on here in a hot minute.
I know, we did have to skip you for one because our schedules just did not line up. And actually, Karina's birthday was 2 days ago. So I was like, let's do a semi-joke podcast on you aging because you're so old, which you're obviously not.
I'm actually the youngest I've ever been. I'm the youngest woman alive. Actually, so I don't know what Laurin is talking about.
If you guys get that reference,
DM us.
You're part of the cult. All right, yeah. We'll just leave it at that. But if not, all good. But so we did want to do a podcast on aging because you have done a bunch of work with Dr. Dom D'Agostino and just in that lab, and you know we're both interested in aging in general, and I think it's a cool topic, so we wanted to hit on it, kind of like I said, as a joke for your birthday, but really, it is an important topic.
It's fitting.
It is very fitting. So.
Yeah, so I thought it would be good to start with the pros of aging. Like, why is aging so great before we kind of get into the rest of the podcast and how it impacts the potential to build muscle, lose body fat, and things like that. So my favorite part of aging is becoming wiser, hopefully. Hopefully I'm getting wiser. Maybe we should ask my therapist, Rick, if I'm any wiser at the age of 26.
He's listening now. He's like, no, absolutely not.
But yeah, and then just being able to use hindsight as a tool moving into the future. And then obviously getting more attractive the older I get, clearly.
Where are you going with this? I was like, I did not think this was part of
the pros. The pros of aging is just getting hotter as we get older.
This was the last thing that I expected to be. Now, I will say though, for sure, because everybody, like up until this point in your life, like you just turned 26.
I was just so awkward looking when I was 14. I'm like so much hotter than I was back then.
Hey guys, Karina just wanted to let you guys know that she is 26 and fucking hot. That's really what the point of this podcast was.
I'll post some like throwback pictures of me in middle school and everyone will be like, oh god, yeah.
Honestly, besides middle schoolers nowadays who like have YouTube tutorials and look like they're 30.
The middle schoolers today are like a new breed.
Yeah, we were not cool. Not in that group. No. I was in the very weird group, and this is a funny story, so I'll just tell this before we get to it. So I used to ride horses competitively. I just did that my whole life for like 13 years. And it was very normal for horse girls to run around like you were a horse. Like everybody everybody like did that, and so you would like we call it like you know like running around like a horse, and we would like set up like jumps like you were like the horse, and like we did the whole thing, right? Like this was like super commonplace. So at the meetup, we had a team meetup for clients.
That's what that was about.
Yes. Like last weekend, while we were recording this last week, one of the girls was talking about the Tom Segura podcast called Your Mom's House. It's really funny. Way funnier than us. But they showed this clip of this girl like pretending like she was a horse and all this. So the one client was like saying that to like just like bring it up as like a funny thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I used to do that all the time. And then one of the other clients.
Oh, that's actually me.
One of the other clients was like, yeah, I used to do that too because she was also a horse girl. So then that's why we had that video that we made. Like literally, we were at the gym. We were like jumping over stuff and like taking videos.
In the middle of the gym, they set up a bench, and then there was like a lane cleared out for them to gallop up to the bench and jump over it. And I'm just like overhead pressing, like okay, like
you can see it.
This is Team LocoFit.
One of the other clients was filming a squat, and you can see it like in the mirror, like as we're.
Anyways, that's how the meetup went.
Anyways, so yeah, we've clearly aged much better than
like wine.
Middle school. Yes, like wine, my favorite. Yeah. So besides the pros of aging,
wait, I wanted to ask you what your favorite thing about aging, because those are all my favorite things.
Apparently, just so fucking hot.
Dude, I'm way more attractive than I was.
I was just not ready for that comment. Probably my favorite part of aging is just, I feel like, being able to understand things in like a broader and like a deeper perspective.
Yeah.
I think
getting
that, like,
smarter.
Hopefully we're getting smarter and just more like just nuance in your approach with everything. And you know, like you can learn stuff when you're younger, and I think that obviously you have to focus on higher education and just learning and challenging yourself when you're younger. But I think back now, like 10 years ago, if I were to enter college now versus like then, how much better it would be, right? Which obviously, you know, you can't do that. It's just a totally different situation. But I just think like, wow, how much better would I have learned things if I was older or like had just like a different approach. But I think part of it too is like sometimes you have to learn those things. Otherwise I wouldn't have been able to get to where I am now either, right? So it's kind of like this weird situation. But my favorite part of aging for sure is being able to have a deeper understanding of things and like a deeper appreciation, I think, of a broader range of topics. And I've really tried to do that as of age, so.
Yeah, no, I think you've done a good job. Okay, so...
And drinking's legal,
yeah, and then obviously handling your alcohol a little bit better. That's up for debate, depending on the person. Okay, and
Karina definitely doesn't have that fucking trait.
Not yet. Maybe,
whatever gene that is.
Maybe in 10 more years.
Maybe another few years on the team.
I know, I struggle after one drink. I'm ready for bed. But, okay, so now we'll move into things people care about. So... We'll start out with aging's impact on muscle potential and gain. And so typically, if any of you are familiar with the term sarcopenia, that is basically to describe the fact that in the literature, it is noted around the age of 30 is when we start to lose muscle mass each year as we age. So basically from age 0 to 30, you have the potential to gain muscle each year should you do all the good things, right? Resistance train, eat enough, not constantly be in a caloric deficit and all those things. So basically, like I mentioned, after the age of 30, I think is when most individuals really need to work hard on staying on top of resistance training, staying on top of their protein intake, because it's going to be much harder for most people after the age of 30 to hold on to muscle mass simply because of the hormonal shifts that happen as we age. Somewhere in the literature I read that especially if you're physically inactive, this decline can happen up to 3 to 5% of muscle lost every single year. So being physically active and resistance training is going to be super important, I feel, for individuals of all ages. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Oh, it's super important. And it's really one of the most... So when we have a client come to us, right, and they say, hey, I want to look like X, or a very classic example, we work with a lot of females, like, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds or 15 pounds, right? It's like, sure, you might want to lose a certain amount of weight, but really what you're telling me is that you want your body composition to look different.
Right.
And when you want your body composition to look different, certainly you might want to have less fat mass, but you definitely want to have more muscle mass, because I can peel 15 or 20 pounds off of you, but you're still not going to be happy with what you look like.
Right.
The people that you're looking to, doesn't matter what their age is, they have more muscle than you. Exactly. So it's really, really important for people to understand, like, all right, I need to not only maybe lose a little bit of body fat, but I need to add muscle in the right places. And that will not only make your metabolism a lot stronger and just better in general, and, you know, put you in a better position metabolically, but really, like, you're going to look better too.
Yeah, you'll look tighter at a heavier weight even.
When we tell people how much we weigh, they would generally be like, oh my God, like I get that all the time, like there's no way you weigh that much. And I'm like, yes, like this is how much I weigh, like I'm 160 pounds, like just is what it is. And while I'm certainly not like a small person, you wouldn't necessarily like, it's just...
I'd say you're pretty lean, like in my opinion, and yeah, I think that's where most people
the density
like you have
changes.
A lot of muscle. Yeah, and so individuals...
It's because I'm tall, right?
Tall with muscle would make you very dense. But yeah, so people who are muscle is more dense than fat. If you have, you know, more muscle than fat mass, you're just going to weigh more. And so, you know, we talk about aging, even getting into like 50s, 60s, 70s, having some muscle at that point as well is going to be super important for just your ability to continue to walk, not fracture hips and bones. And
one of the, I can't remember, I'm going to mess this up, but Dr. Andy Galvin, he's amazing, super incredibly smart. He does a bunch of research on like muscle fiber type and stuff like that. He works with a bunch of fighters and all this stuff. And he was talking about one of the biggest things like with aging is
obviously when people fall and like break their hips, or like older people, and then that kind of just sends like a whole cascade of things, like not just like from their actual hip issue, but like obviously mobility goes down and like their walking goes down, and then that obviously causes other issues, whatever. But one of the actual things that's important there is like not just like the actual act of falling, but if people can change their reaction time, so that like if they are strong enough to like where they might have tripped or they might have slipped, then they actually were able to catch themselves, they now aren't breaking their hip, or they aren't fracturing, whatever it might be. So they're in a way better place just by simply having better reaction time. And the way that they have that is just by being, again, physically active, physically fit. We're not talking about being a bodybuilder when you're 70 years old.
No.
We're talking about like, hey,
muscle.
if you've been training, you train several days a week, moderate intensity, like cool, you're getting in there, you're doing something, you're going to be in a way better position than when you're getting older, because the muscle related age, like the age related muscle wasting is going to happen, especially if you're not on top of it. And you're going to be in a better position if you are trying, hey, earlier in your life, you lifted some weights, you ate some protein, like you're in a good spot. You're going to be much better off as you age. And it is very concerning when you see people who, that's who you're seeing is not really doing great when they're older. They're very frail, they're very brittle. They might be thin or they might be overweight, but they don't have a lot of muscle.
Right.
And they certainly don't have a good reaction time when they're in that kind of position.
Yeah, and I read this statistic somewhere is like if an individual over the age of 65 or 70 has to undergo like hip surgery or something, their chances of dying within 6 months after go up by like 80%.
That is so crazy.
They're so sedentary, but also at that age in which like just being in bed for a long time just essentially speeds up your ability to unfortunately pass away. So I would say and
fight off infection. If you're not a healthier person, you're going in for this incredibly invasive surgery. If there is anything that comes up, because surgery is like not as clean and great as everybody thinks. I mean, it's great, but it still has some risk.
Potential for infection with open wounds and things like that.
And if you're not in a good spot beforehand, you're certainly not going to be able to come out of that easier.
Right.
If you have a decent diet, if you have a solid activity going on, like you're going to be in a better position to recover.
Yeah. And first people, like obviously, I'm 26. I understand that I have a while.
Person alive.
I understand that I have a while till I'm like 60 or something. But I think of like my dad, who is like in his 50s. Every time he comes over, I'm like, hey, let's squat in the gym real quick. Like I like, and just I think that even if you are someone who is our age, like relaying this information to your parents and your grandparents can be very valuable.
Challenging but important.
Absolutely. It's
my parents are fully on board.
Yeah.
Getting my grandma to like not eat cookies for lunch is like challenging.
Yeah, definitely.
She's like, no, my lunch is like a peanut butter sandwich and like cookies. You're like, no, that's
you need
not
protein or vegetables.
Like
good
option.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll get to her.
I know.
My grandparents are like, they love sugar too. It's tough.
I do. I mean, obviously there's a cultural thing too. Like at like that age of people, like 70, 80, 90, like, they just grew up very differently. Like the way, like we are so. Obviously, there's a lot of mixed messages within like mainstream
even within
media,
our
but we're just
niche,
way healthier.
Yeah, even within our niche too. Like not everyone is like us.
For sure. But just in general, I would say that people nowadays are much healthier and much more aware of what's in food. Yeah. If they choose to not follow certain guidelines or not be healthy, that's on them. Yeah. But it's much more obvious like what's in stuff. You know what I mean? Versus like my grandma who's almost 80, like when she was, in her 20s and 30s and even 40s, like this information was just not prevalent or out there, so it's just totally different how things are nowadays. So it is a lot easier, like when are going to make a lifestyle change. But when you're 75, you're kind of like, fuck you.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still alive. Like, come and get me. Like,
exactly. Like, I don't really care.
Exactly.
So,
but you do, I think, as like, grandchildren who love their grandparents, so like, we do our best to.
Like, here's some protein powder. Please drink this.
Yeah. Have some greens. But speaking on diet now, I guess it would be the perfect segue into talking about how aging impacts our ability to lose body fat and our metabolism in general. And, if you haven't already listened to the podcast on what I would have done differently, in which I kind of took it as a Q&A toward Laurin, I think about this as well as like, we just left the muscle topic, but I wish that as a 18, 19, 20 to 22-year-old, I wasn't dieting so much so I can like let my body take advantage of like the muscle potential it had and let my body like essentially not be so metabolically suppressed, because if I just made the most of it during those years, I'd probably be in a better position. Now, it doesn't mean like you can't undo those things, but still, you know, what we do throughout entire life, and this is something I think is super important to consider when aging, it's like it all compounds. You think of like atherosclerotic diseases.
I could like read it.
Yeah,
but
atherosclerotic diseases, you know, it's the accumulation of like plaque over many years of, you know, bad dietary habits and poor lifestyle, you know, habits. All of those things accumulate, the way we move, how we eat. And so I think the same thing when I think about metabolism. Like, how we live our lives is essentially going to impact us in the long run. Lauren, I think, at least more than myself, you work with a lot of postmenopausal women.
I have, yeah.
And I would like to know kind of what you've observed on menopause's impact on aging.
So menopause in general has a very varied just response to people, right? Some people really have no issues. Other people have tons of side effects from it. It's kind of like anything, right? But even just in general, as women age, right? Whether they, you know, have had a hysterectomy, that's one thing. Whether they've, you know, gone through menopause, is another thing. Just in general, if they haven't hit that yet, but they are maybe a little bit older, 45, 50, 55, that kind of age range. Mm-hmm. And just in general, typically, so two things I see. One, these people more than likely, not all, but more than likely have had a long dieting history. So that's going to compound kind of anything that we're trying to do, right? So if somebody's dieted off and on for the past 10, 20, 30 years, we're now at the space where it's like, okay, anything that we're going to do is going to be like at a snail's pace. So that's already going to be part of it. Yeah. And then add their age to it, and potentially all these hormone changes, things are just going to be a lot slower. And I just find that these clients just don't tolerate food as well. And, you know, we could sit here and we can showcase our clients who are eating 400 carbs and they have abs and everything's cool and everything's great.
And they're also in their 20s.
They're also 21.
Yeah.
Right? And that's great. And I'm so happy that those people are doing that.
Yeah.
But I don't want other clients to think that needs to be them or that they're doing something wrong if that's not where they're at, right?
Yeah.
The reality is most of the older women that I've worked with are going to need to be on a more aggressive diet when they are in a calorie deficit. And even in an off-season period, like a non-dieting phase, they're just simply not going to be able to maintain their weight on as much food. They're just not. And they might not even actually be as hungry, so it's really fine. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of just, it's not really like this thing to where they're like, oh my gosh, I have this raging appetite and I'm just like gaining all this weight. It's like they're kind of like, no, I kind of feel fine here and I don't really need that much. And things just kind of slow down. And for some people, they also can lose their insulin sensitivity a little bit faster than others. So as we age, carb metabolism and just insulin sensitivity in general does change. Mm-hmm. For some women, it doesn't change that much. They can handle carbohydrates, great. Other women handle fats much better. Some, it's just kind of a mix and it's all about the calorie control. So a few things. So if you are going to be in that kind of, you know, age range, whether it is postmenopausal or, you know, maybe you're not there yet exactly, but you're 45, 50, 55, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Just realize that if you're looking at somebody who, again, might be 18, 25, even maybe 30, right? Kind of getting to that range. Yeah. They likely have not had the same dieting history as you. They don't have the same hormonal profile as you. Mm-hmm. If they did start lifting earlier than you, they're going to have a very different body than you might have for the next 10 years. And also just recognize that like your metabolism is going to be a little bit different than theirs. You may have to adjust the type of macronutrients that you're hitting. You may have to just adjust the calories in general. And that's okay. That's going to be where a coach comes in to really help figure that stuff out. Mm-hmm. But I think that it is really important to not, it is a different body. It is different metabolism. It is a different hormonal profile. The only way to know this, of course, is if you do get your hormones tested. Yep. And at that point, some women do choose to go on HRT, and that is a really great decision for some people. Yeah. And HRT is just essentially replacing hormones. So this is done all through a doctor, and you're getting blood tests every 4 weeks, and you're regulating things. Obviously, some younger women also have to go on HRT for different reasons. Right. But in general, you're going to see somebody who's a little bit older go on HRT to kind of replace where they were previously, but that also might not change how they can eat. So just because their hormones are regulated now doesn't mean they can go back to eating 400 carbs, right? Like they could, but they might not also be able to, because now they're just going back to physiological range. That's the whole part of HRT. It's not going to these super physiological ranges. So it's very nuanced and very complex, but I hope that helped. Was that a good?
Yeah. I think that was really good. And obviously, I know that you worked with more individuals than myself. I've worked with a few women who are postmenopausal and women who are young who just have to be on hormone replacement therapy due to like genetic factors and things like that.
This is not an HRT podcast, but I just want to say that that is not something to be ashamed about.
No, my stepmom like started HRT and she's like, my life is so much better now because I feel so much more normal. And I'm like, thank God.
There is a lot of, like anything, there's stigma around it. Right. And I think that sometimes people will be like, well, if I don't get tested, then I don't need to know what's wrong, and then I'll just kind of brush it off. And you also at some point get kind of used to feeling a certain way, right? Like you just kind of like, oh, I'll just chalk it up to this, or it's my life, or it's my job, or it's whatever it might be.
Right.
But it's like, no, like there actually could be these things that are wrong. And especially when you're going through menopause and you have all of these very, very erratic changes, there are some side effects that are like crippling, you know? And it's like, if you want to fight through that on your own, cool. But I also don't want people to think that they need to, or like they're gonna get like a fucking badge of honor or like a sticker because they did it. Like you don't necessarily need to. And of course, there is risk with everything. There's always gonna be a risk when you take any kind of supplement.
Yeah. And I'm aware of the research on the risk.
Exactly.
And then it's like you just, as the individual, you have to do that research and understand
and what are the pros and cons.
Yeah, for you. What
and just every time you take Tylenol, there is a risk there, right?
Right.
Doesn't mean you don't take it. I mean, some people don't, but in general, right? Like that, there are certain things that are so well accepted as far as like, oh yeah, well, there's all these side effects. Alcohol, perfect example. Alcohol has become widely accepted as something that's like, yeah, we know it's not great for us, but like it's totally fine, right?
But
then people say like, oh, I'm taking HRT, you know, I'm taking a little bit of estrogen and maybe some progesterone. People are like, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, are you sure? Like that's gonna hurt you. You're like, what? Yeah. Like, right? So I just want people to know that if you are in a situation where, for whatever reason, you might need it, don't feel uncomfortable, feel bad about it. Like, it's just something that needs to be replaced, and maybe you don't stay on it forever. Most people do, because that's how it works. But if you don't like it, you don't stay on it. But most people will feel 100 times better. Yeah. And it's just something to do.
Yeah, and I think you kind of covered everything I wanted to talk about on that end, and it's very similar to like the change in like the curve on the graph with metabolism. It's just like after you get older, even before menopause, it's going to be harder for you to lose body fat. You're not going to be able to, and people say this all the time, like when I was 16, I was able to eat McDonald's 5 times a week and was able to have whatever body I wanted, and like that's not the way it's going to work. And I think that you need to consider excuse me, where you are, essentially, like diet history, training age, blah blah blah. Understand like what's going to be realistic for you to do to maintain a body composition that you're going to feel comfortable with. Don't look at these like 18, 21-year-old girls on Instagram who are eating like 400 grams of carbs a day with abs and shredded, who have never done a diet before in their life and think that that's where you need to be. That's not what's true for everyone. And I get messages from people all the time like, why don't I look like her? Well, because your physiology is totally different. It has gone through different things than she or he did. Mm-hmm. So,
and maybe that person was an athlete for their whole life, right?
Exactly.
Like, even us, for example, like we did sports our entire lives, right? Whether we were actively trying to build muscle or not, we were doing sports. There's a lot of people who don't do that, right? So then they're 18, they graduate high school, they've never participated in any team sports or any outside kind of sports.
Right.
Then they go through college, maybe they go through whatever. They haven't really trained. And then now they're 40 and they're like, wow, I really wish I looked like so-and-so. And it's like, well, this person has been training for
since
20 years.
12. Yeah. No.
Like, and you can't compare yourself to that. Yeah. Not only where your body is currently at, just where it is, but also the history that you've put it through.
Right. And so like I take all of this, I mean, I'm only 26. I understand that I'm still pretty young.
Young and hot.
Young and hot. Don't forget it. I mean, I'm still going to be hot when I'm 50. Don't get me wrong. Like, I know that I'm still going to be a smoke show, okay? Just like many other 50-year-olds I know. But what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, just taking this hindsight and also talking to a lot of the younger girls who might pay attention to us on Instagram or listen to us and understanding, like, if you're, 18, 19, 20, don't rush to diet or run your metabolism into the ground. Give your body time to take advantage of all the potential it has right now to build muscle before you lose that chance and lose out on that window.
Take it from us, ladies.
Yeah.
Don't do what we did.
Yeah.
Or do, but then you will have consequences.
I know,
so it's
yeah.
fine.
So
just be informed with whatever you choose
be informed,
to do.
and that's essentially our mission. But I wanted to now move into essentially what might be deemed as popular aging diets or popular ways to eat to mitigate aging.
Yeah, whenever people hear aging, they think this is what they think of. Like in my mind, this is what they're thinking of for diet. So fasting. So basically, this has become almost like cult style popularized, essentially, right? Like fasting is going to create autophagy, which is going to make me look and feel really young. I'm going to do it. Like that is literally like the flow diagram of like how people think. Now, not everybody, we're really oversimplifying it, but this is a message that a lot of people talk about.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of great, very intelligent people who do fast, and they do use it for, hey, this might have potential anti-aging benefits. We don't really know, and the evidence is not clear in humans. They've done plenty of research in animal models, but as we've seen with virtually every other type of research, animal models do not always correlate with human models.
Right.
That is the best option that we have.
Yeah, and not to poop on animal models. We need animal models to move into clinical
You
trials.
have to do animal research first.
Yeah.
And using mice is going to be the best
Right.
option. But that does not always mean that it's a direct one-to-one correlation.
Exactly.
And we can do a lot of really, really cool things with mice that you can't do with an IRB with a human, right? So we're trying to find the mechanism first with animal research and then move into human trials and just human research in general.
Yeah.
So autophagy is kind of this big hot topic, and people think like, oh, if you fast, you're gonna like age better, and food is killing everybody, and it's all the sugar, all this stuff, right? Like these are all the messages that are promoted.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, this is where it gets kind of dicey.
Yeah, and so obviously, like, I think right now the rodent and mice research is all pointing in this direction that a lot of people are hopeful for. But like Lauren said, like when it comes to rodents, like thankful for them. But you need to take that with a grain of salt. A gram of salt. A gram of salt is kind of a lot. Take it with a whole gram of salt.
Damn, it's a salty bitch.
But yeah, so take those things with a grain of salt. I think it's important for us to essentially clarify like what autophagy means. And so the goal with fasting, when people talk about autophagy, is that essentially when you're fasting, your body goes into this catabolic state, and it'll kind of send off all these signals to essentially say, okay, this person that we are living inside, our metabolism says, is not feeding us anything. We now need to play survival of the fittest with ourselves. And basically, the idea is that your body will get rid of all of the cells that are not the fittest, or all of the possibly precancerous cells, and kind of do away with those. And so then after the fast, you are left with the best, youngest, freshest cells. And so you could possibly go into more details through other resources that we'd be happy to provide on like how the anti-aging mechanism through autophagy works. But that's the very watered down, like elementary explanation of it. And so, yeah, that sounds really great. And there are people, like you mentioned, that we really look up to who practice it normally. But I don't feel comfortable as someone to say like, this absolutely works.
And they don't really do that either.
No, they don't. They do it for themselves, and they're like, this is what I'm going to extrapolate. Yeah, this is what I'm going to extrapolate for myself. I'm not recommending this for everyone else. And you just take from that as you will. They're not forcing anything on anyone. But I feel like there are social media influencers out there who say you should fast for 24 hours and it's going to be the best thing for you. I think that you should be presented with the evidence and extrapolate what you feel is going to be best for you. And so whether you feel like fasting is great for you or not, absolutely up to you. You can look at the research and look at the data, which is what we would recommend, and think for yourself, essentially.
Make your own decisions. But yeah, so just know that there is some promising data that's been coming out. Mm-hmm. But also don't think that fasting is just going to be like this aging miracle. Mm-hmm. In general, the things that really work no matter what point in your life you're at.
I think
quality diet.
Dr. Lyon on the podcast, that would be really good for her to talk about.
Really, hopefully we can do that soon. But, high quality diet with high protein, fruits and veggies, not a bunch of bullshit in
Stay
there.
active.
Drink water,
Resistance
work out,
training,
sleep, be active, which is our next podcast, sleeping. So do all these things, and that's going to be much better than the occasional fast that you might do, right? The problem is with everything, everybody latches on to these really quick fixes or these things that are really glitzy and glamorous. And fasting offers a lot of promise. It offers a lot of really cool things. If I fast for 28 or 48 hours, I'm going to kill off precancerous cells. Okay, I could fucking do that. I can do this thing for a short 1 to 2 days. But really what it is, that might help. But also, what you're doing for 10 years is going to be more important.
Right. And then also, some people feel absolutely horrible while fasting.
Yes.
So.
But just in general, you can do something for 1 to 2 days. That's cool. Yeah. But what have you done for the past 10 years? And what are you going to do for the next 10 years?
Talking about the cumulative effect over time. Yeah. You eating a salad, for a day, is not going to
congrats
stave off all of this cardiovascular disease and all that
it's
stuff.
just whenever we were just talking about this when we were out for brunch, typically there'll be a few meals a week that I eat out, and usually they're going to be more fun, not always, but sometimes, and usually I'm going to have a few drinks, but those are the fun things that I'm sharing. I'm not sharing my boring plain
rice
toast or rice and some grilled chicken. Sometimes I do share that, but it's not so if people might see that and be oh my gosh, this is what you're eating all the time. It's no, out of all of the meals in 1 week, or out of the whole month, this might be happening just a few times.
This is the most exciting thing.
Exactly. This is great. And Bloody Marys are basically vegetables with vodka, so I feel really good about it. Yeah. It just kind of cancels each other out. That's where I'm at. But seriously, the cumulative effect is going to be much more important for aging. And you don't just wake up one day and be wow, my whole body has aged. You don't wake up one day with really shitty skin. You don't wake up one day with a body that you don't like. You don't wake up one day with metabolic disease.
Right.
It happens over time. It happens over years. Yeah. So what you really need to do is focus on what are the bigger picture things that I can be doing. Eating a healthy diet, drinking water, getting adequate sleep, resistance training.
Yeah.
These are the things we talk about over and over and over again, but they are what matters most. So we can get into really cool nitty-gritty details about all this stuff, but in reality,
these are the basics, and this is essentially all you need to start, whether you are 15 or 65. It's all going to accumulate, and just start with simple lifestyle habits to age better.
For sure. So thank you guys so much for listening. As always, if you have any questions, you can go to teamlocofit.com. You can send us an email through there, apply for coaching, check out anything else on our website, and we will catch you guys on Wednesday.
Bye.